The leaves of this plant are a literal graveyard for fungus gnats. So this little guy is a carnivorous plant called Mexican butterwort or Pinuicula. They come in lots of different shapes and sizes and colors, and they use these fleshy little leaves. I don't know if you can see it, but they create a nice little dewy texture on those leaves, and that attracts a whole bunch of little bugs, especially fungus gnats. So what's great about this is you've heard about the Venus flytrap and maybe some pitcher plants or something, and most of those plants do their best when they're outdoors. But this plant does really, really well just on a sunny windowsill. So it's perfect to keep amongst your other plants inside your home, and it can kind of help control your fungus gnat population. I also really like that it doesn't look like a carnivorous plant. From afar, it just looks like a cute little succulent hanging out in a pot. But as we get in closer, you can see that it is a very productive bug eater. Here's how you can get your holiday cactus to explode with blooms. Now, first things first, they need really, really bright light. My favorite thing to do is to put this plant outside during the spring and summer months. As long as it's above 50 or 60 degrees Fahrenheit, they can go outside in morning or evening sun. You really want to avoid that afternoon direct sun, usually from about 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. If you give it the right light, it's really going to charge up those batteries to explode with these blooms come Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, whichever holiday cactus you have. Next up is watering. You don't want to let these wilt in between watering because that's constantly putting them in shock. And if they're constantly going in shock, they're not going to give you all these nice blooms that we like. I like to water these plants when they're about 25% dry. Now, after they bloom in their respective season, I back that off to about 50% between watering. Last but not least, fertilizing. A good general purpose, well-balanced fertilizer throughout the spring and summer months is really going to give this plant the extra nutrients it needs to explode with all the nice blooms. Now, something you don't need to do is put this thing in a closet. Remember, there are no closets out in nature. Nobody is putting Christmas cactus, Thanksgiving cactus, Easter cactus in the closet to make them bloom in nature. Likewise, we don't need to do that in our homes. There are basically two things that are going to trigger the blooms when it's the right season for it to be in bloom. One is shorter photo periods, so the plant can recognize when we have shorter days, less hours of daylight. Also, a drop in temperature. That's why I love to just keep these outside as long as possible throughout the spring and summer and into the early fall, as long as it's the right temperature. But when those nighttime temperatures start to drop, you're going to start getting these buds, and that's when we bring them inside. It should have a ton of buds on them like this. Put it in a window, they'll come out, it'll be beautiful. If a plant is overwatered, why is it dehydrated? It seems totally counterintuitive, but I'll explain it really quick and it'll all make sense, I promise. Roots are responsible for taking up water and nutrients up to the leaves. So if a plant is dehydrated, maybe there's not moisture in the soil for the roots to take up to the leaves. On the other hand, if there's been too much moisture, then that has killed off the roots, and then there's no roots available to take up moisture to the leaves. So either there's no moisture available, or there's no roots available to take up the moisture that is available. So in that video you're referring to, most of the roots had died off, but there were a couple of healthy roots, and it's still important to hydrate those roots so that they can in turn hydrate those leaves. That's why I cut off those two bottom leaves, because those tiny little roots would not be able to hydrate 4 leaves, but maybe they can rehydrate 2 leaves. So that's what we're going for. Here are the top 3 reasons why you're killing your houseplants and how to fix them. By far the most common is your plant is not getting bright enough light. If your bright light plant is not looking out at the wide open blue sky, it's not going to work. A bright light plant simply will not adapt to low light. And this is what we mean by low light. There's very little, if any, view of the sky for the plant. The second reason you're killing your houseplants is you're watering them too frequently. When the soil stays too wet for too long, that's going to rot the roots, and the health of the roots is the health of your plant. The majority of houseplants want to dry out at least an inch or 2 between watering. And the final reason is pests. There's not a lot we can do other than be diligent in checking. If we can catch it early, it's more likely we can get rid of them before they cause serious harm. Pests really like to hide on the undersides of your leaves, so make sure you're checking. The room you're in doesn't actually matter. The real thing that matters is how much light does the plant have. Of course, most houseplants are tropical, so being in a bathroom with higher humidity would be fantastic for just about all houseplants. If your bathroom has a view of the sky, you can do bright light plants. Even if your windows are frosted, that doesn't really hurt the lighting so much. It's really about, is there unobstructed sky on the other side? If your bathroom doesn't have a wide view of the sky like here, you're going to need to get a grow light. These are the ones that we recommend. Or you can just get something super low light tolerant like a snake plant or a golden pothos and switch them out every month or so. 1 month, give them a nice wide view of the sky. The next month you can keep it in your bathroom with no windows in this case. A customer returned this fiddle leaf fig after 2 years of owning it. She wasn't unhappy with it or anything, she was just kind of over it. So we decided to take it in. It was in desperate need of a repot. You could see right there that the soil is very cracked and dry. It's become what's called hydrophobic, and that's actually where the soil has been dehydrated for so long that now it repels water. It's not able to kind of take the moisture in down to the root ball. So we got to take care of that. We didn't really need a larger pot on this plant, but more so just refreshing that soil so that it's able to accept water once again. So here I am loosening all the root ball. I like to take a little bamboo stick, massage it with my fingers, try to get as much of that old, dry, crusty soil off as we can. Now because I'm not going any larger in pot size, we're just going to trim some of the roots off. Never more than 1/3 at a time though. Just a little bit off the end is perfectly fine. Here we're going to mix up our soil. For fiddle leaf figs, I like to do 1 part moisture retention material and 1 part moisture draining material. In this case, we're doing some cocoa coir, we're doing some perlite, we're doing some vermiculite, and some orchid bark, and that's going to give a nice airy mix that still supports the tree and most importantly is going to be able to hydrate those roots. Make sure you knock around the ends right there so that all of that soil is getting down into and around the root ball. You don't want to miss anything. You don't want to have any gaps. Of course, make sure to firm up the soil around it as well so that it can support the height of the tree. That's super important. And here we go. The finished product that's going right back in our room. Here's how we take care of the Pilea pepermoides. It's going to need bright light, so make sure it has a wide view of the sky. In the spring and summer months, water when it's 25% dry. In the wintertime, let it dry out 50% between watering. Repot the plant when the roots are coming out of the bottom drainage system. For soil, I use a 1-to-1 ratio of houseplant soil mixed with cactus soil. They like a pretty good free draining material. Doming of the leaves usually means it's in too low of light or you're overwatering, or both. Cupping can be too bright light, underwatering, and nutrient deficiency. This kind of cupping is natural. The bottom leaves always die off, so don't be alarmed if that's the case. There you go. Here we have the aloe vera. It is the medicinal kind. There are tons of different kinds of aloe out there, so if you're looking for the medicinal benefits, you know, the cuts, the scrapes, the burns, that sort of thing, then you make sure you get the aloe vera. The succulent, so it won't live this far away from the window. We've got to bring it much closer so that the leaves are looking out at a wide view of the sky, preferably from an east, west, or south-facing window. As far as watering goes, we just let all of the soil dry out in between watering. So if there's wet soil in your pot, just wait. They're very drought tolerant. They store a ton of moisture in their leaves. So if you're not sure if it's 100% dry, just wait. So we're doing 100% drought, 100% flood, drought, flood. Make sure there's always drainage. When it's time to repot this guy, we use 100% cactus soil or succulent soil, it's the same thing, and just go up 1 pot size. It's gonna do it for the aloe vera, really handy, great plant, and easy to grow around the house, very useful as well. Get you one. Technically, the answer is no, but it can make plant care a whole lot harder. Let me show you what I mean. So this is my lovely drawing of a pot, and these are the roots that are coming down. Notice all this negative space. This is going to be the soil, so the soil will be retaining moisture. If the soil stays too wet for too long, these roots are going to suffocate and die. So all of the soil that's not touching the roots is mostly going to rely on evaporation to dry out. In short, the soil to root ratio is more in favor of the soil and not the roots. We really want it to be more in favor of the roots. In this example, we have a more appropriately potted plant, and the soil to root ratio is much more in favor closer to the root system than the soil. So less moisture is being retained, and therefore we are lessening our risk of root rot, which is probably the main killer of houseplants in our experience. So there you go.